What is going on, All Terrain Nation? It might be early. It might, you might not have your coffee or your Monster or whatever you drink in you, but this is the Midsize Truck Show. And what is going on, Mr. Tim?
Yeah. That's a pretty fired up intro for 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm impressed. I was like, wipe sleep. Yeah.
Oh, man. So we're early today, or I'm early today because of I have something to do with my kids. I've got some softball stuff. Kelly, we've talked about it many times. Me and Kelly are on the board of this local softball thing, and well, she wouldn't let me get out of it. So I have to do this a little bit early. I want to say thank you. Tim hit me up last night. He's like, "Hey, I'm under like 20 feet of snow. What else I got going on?" So
yeah, right.
So how's Blizzard Land, Tim?
Cold and. Yeah, it's actually supposed to be warm today, which is 45. Yeah. If that's warm.
Do kids go to school in that for you guys if it's that bad?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Man, we got out for a potential rain the other day.
Well, the snow hit it over a period of time. They were able to clear the roads and it's just bad luck. They've had more snow days than ever had in I think in years here in Gearing. It's just it's been a rough winter. There's just no doubt about it. It's the worst one I've ever had in my adult life. I mean, we've had more snow in January we've ever seen in 100 and some years, and we've had cold temperatures. And then freaking people like in Nashville have the warmest Nashville they've had in February's history.
Oh, did you see that on the news there? We had 85 degrees here the other day, man. Broke a big record. Yeah, but I paid for it yesterday. It was like 40, and so I mean, for going from 85 to 40, like. And 40 doesn't sound bad from what you're in, but it's still just kind of a shock to your system of like, oh, this is great. I had the top down on the Bronco, and then you're like, damn, this is cold.
Right. Yeah, I honestly just tired of being cold. I just want to be outside doing stuff. And I've had a lot of time in a blanket wrapped around in my chair watching, TV, sitting there bored.
A hot toddy and watch some TV.
It does help. It does take the chill off.
That's right. Well, today we are going to talk about the Nissan Frontier a little bit. Something I have a lot of experience with, and I know Tim, you got a video coming up pretty soon about the Nissan Frontier. But I wanted to kind of just talk about it a little bit. If Tim would ever finish the video, by the way.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit off air. I actually have one done for like last 2 or 3 weeks. I will say this in my defense. I did Nissan Frontier, and then I flew to the Chevy Colorado drive, and then I thought about changing my Frontier video to do Frontier versus Colorado comparison, because I think that makes a lot more sense than comparing all the other ones.
Both brand new vehicles, the latest in midsize.
Yeah, and I could speak to both of them, so I was like, well, I need to really edit that video a little differently. But yeah, I mean, I had the Frontier. I'm gonna say it's been 3-4 weeks ago now. The thing with the Frontier is, new versus Colorado, especially, it's not like flashy. It's not like over the top kind of stuff. There's nothing like for me, there's no like wow factor with the Frontier. But it's just a solid truck. I mean, it's just a solid little pickup. You can option it up to be pretty expensive. You get click all these boxes, but you can get a pretty decent base price though if you decide not to check those boxes. And I haven't shopped for Nissan Frontier dealerships at all, and I'm not sure if the dealers even order them as base models kind of stuff, or if they just buy them all like spruced up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've mentioned many times on your show, and I think on this one of, press vehicles they give you the best of the best, but I think it was last week when you were on here talking about the Colorado it shows right here, starting out at $29,190, and then you go to build the thing, and it's $30,000. You're like, where's that truck? And all these do it, and you can see the little star by it. They've already told you, hey, you really can't get it this way, but we needed a price point. But no, like the Frontier to me, Nissan took so much garbage about the last generation, and the last generation was a solid truck. Unfortunately, they rode that pony a little too long, but it was a great truck. And now the chassis and everything about that truck is under this one. They've refreshed it slightly, but this one here is a good looking vehicle. But I'm like you with the interior, it just not enough wow. Especially when you see these modern, like we saw the Colorado. Me and you both got to get in that and check it out. That's pretty wow factor for it looks new. It's completely different. We've seen the Frontier a little bit because it looks a lot like the Titan on the inside. Now the outside, I see a little Titan in it, but I see them chasing Toyota just a little bit with it. But the interior, yeah, I'm that's the one thing that when I had my last press vehicle with Nissan is it's fun, it's nice, but I think their audience might be for they're looking for a certain audience that doesn't want all that maybe.
Well, they have the money.
Yeah, I mean
They have the money
there
to
is
improve it.
that.
I mean, it's interesting. I've been seeing a few Frontiers in my area, the new ones, because you can really tell. I mean, the grill really stands out, and the overall shape. It's interesting to see them drive around because the whole front shoulder, I would call it there, above the wheel, and the whole
Mhm.
front clip is just it really stands out in the road. And so, I think a lot of people like from the reliability. Nissan's been a pretty reliable truck for the years. The
Mhm.
other generation used to be really cheap value plus reliability, so that was really good for a lot of customers. But
Yeah.
this new one, it's interesting. I think the weird part with that was when the 3.8 came out. It came out the year before, and then they made the change the model year. I mean, it just
Yeah,
kind
they
of speaks to the dysfunction going on within Nissan.
well, what I was told about that from an insider in the company was they had it ready. And even they had the design ready and last minute started tinkering, changing things, and so they were like, "Well," and you know how this goes. They have contracts to start buying
Yeah,
parts, and you have to go and but in a sense too, though, it was kind of interesting because in let's get the bugs worked out of that new engine and the older they knew they weren't going to sell a ton of it anyways because people knew, Tim, when people get a sense of a new truck coming out, Ford's going through this right now with the Ranger. Sales just tank
yep.
because people know a new one's coming and they want to wait for the newest truck. So I think it was kind of smart for them to let's get that out of the way. It's a good engine though. I do wish, it's got 310 horsepower. I do feel like it doesn't feel like it has 310 horsepower though.
Well, I was thinking about not this morning, last night, not this morning. No, time to think about this morning. I thought about breakfast, but yeah, I was thinking about this. The 3.8 liter is naturally aspirated, and I
Mhm.
wonder if that's going to be the last true naturally aspirated V6 in the market.
Yeah.
You look at the Colorado, there is no more naturally aspirated V6. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, overall performance on a torque-based engine is much better performance. There's much less
Mhm.
emissions, and you typically get better fuel economy. So, from the manufacturer standpoint, why not do that? And I think Colorado was smart because they use a Silverado engine, so they even made that even more profitable for the company. And they're using the
Right.
same engine throughout. So, the 3.8 liter, 3.8 liter, I don't recall. Do they use that in their other vehicles, or is
No,
that
this
just
is it's a new design for them.
yeah?
I
So
mean, it's still based on their VK series engine, or not VK. Oh, I forget what they call the V6. It's still based on the 4 liter. They've just slightly smaller displacement on it.
yeah, so I do wonder, like, because I'm gonna go on a limb and say that the Tacoma is not gonna have naturally aspirated V6. I think it's gonna be turbocharged four cylinders
Are you
because
breaking news here, sir? I
no,
mean,
that's my guess.
that
Actually,
that sounds like no.
I
I'm
don't
kidding.
know, but I'm the way Toyota went with the Tundra, I
Yeah.
can't see them doing a naturally aspirated V6 because why would you have a naturally aspirated V6 in the Tacoma, but then also have twin turbos in the Tundra? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you've mentioned it many times. The best way to get through emissions is lose cylinders.
Mhm.
So you keep losing cylinders and you keep reducing your emissions, which is a big problem with all vehicles now. I mean, it's not a problem for me because I love old school V8s, but
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
want to get through the federal regulations,
I think we're seeing a seismic, a big shift. I can't
yeah,
no more three-syllable words this morning. I think we're seeing a big shift in the marketplace where not only are people being felt like they're forced into EVs and we're doing a lot more electrification, but we're also going to see the death of a lot of natural aspirated engines. So Lexus did this recently with the new RX. There's no V6 anymore. Colorado did this. I think Tacoma could do this. I can't see the Ranger coming in anything besides a small EcoBoost engine. The
yeah,
Maverick is a good example of that. They have a hybrid. They have a EcoBoost engine. So I can't see Ford doing anything beyond that. And so you're going to have all these new trucks coming out that are all you know induced combustion or induced injection
yeah.
turbocharged engines. That's just the future.
Well, Nissan is kind of an old school with the Titan. You only get it in a V8, and I think much to the demise of Titan because I think they promised a lot with that truck and just never delivered with it. But this one here, yeah, I'm with you. But I broke news. It's been several years now on this truck. and they were going to do a Raptor like version of this thing, and I think this engine paired with even a single turbo on this thing, like they would hit easily 400 horsepower. They could tune this to hit 400 horsepower easily, and Nissan would have a fun truck, man. They would be the guy with the sort of big V8 engine in a little truck, sort of. They would have that big V6 in that thing, and they have a lot of potential. And for a long time I've been a big fan of Nissan, but they seem to have the potential. They almost reach for it, and then they decide, oh, it's just like it's a snake. It might bite me. Let's not go all the
Right.
way. And it makes me sad because I like this truck. I think it's a good looking vehicle. I just had it up there, 310 horsepower, 281 foot-pound of torque, which I think the torque is where once the Ranger hits and you start seeing these Colorados out there, you're like, that's pedestrian. Like, yeah, right now you're still best in class with 310 horsepower, but the torque, and of course, all these engines, like you just said, it's turbo. You get a lot of torque from turbo. It's short term. It's not like a big old V8 where you can just really hammer it, but you do get a lot of instant torque with a turbo engine.
Yeah, the torque curve is much better on a turbo engine versus natural aspirated. I do wonder about that because I think if we ever got to the point where we had trucks and did it a lot, I think customers driving a Colorado versus the new Colorado versus a Frontier, or a Frontier versus the new Ranger or Tacoma coming out, I think you're going to see surprisingly that's going to make a big difference. I think that's what happened when the Tacoma came out in 2016. It was fine, but then a couple years on diesel lots without a turbo, and EcoBoost comes out in the Ranger, and you have these small turbo engines. And it's like now people tell me all the time, it's like, oh, the Tacoma is gutless. It's just gutless. And I'm like, well, it wasn't. But the way the market's changed, it feels gutless now. I think the Frontier is the same deal. The way
I do remember though people complaining quite a bit about that Camry engine. Like they were like, but no, it's a good engine. Like the truck drives fine. Yeah.
See, I see you're putting the image of the Nismo Frontier up here, and I think it's a great looking truck. And I think it really could speak to some Nissan heritage. Nissan does a really good job globally in off-road markets. Was it the big one? You did the video guys in Australia with this.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, Nissan's done a lot in the Armada. Nissan's done a lot in the off-road marketplace. So I can see a Frontier working in that marketplace really well. I just don't know, and this is maybe me being extra critical of Nissan. I just don't know if they have the leadership team that wants to see this happen.
Yeah, they're very as a company, they're very strangely focused. They've got a new Z out right now, and that Z instantly it'll sell probably 10,000 a year or so, and which is low volume numbers for anything. And then you have a truck like this that'll probably hit 90 to 100,000 this year in sales. They'll put this on the back burner to talk about Z, and you're like, you have. Toyota, I think what makes the Tacoma so strong is their ability to let aftermarket go at it, to go to the SEMA design stuff, the scan stuff, do whatever you want to this truck. And with overlanding being so popular the past 10 years, Toyota's reliability, and like you said, Nissan is known for reliability. Now, the CVT transmission, I know people might comment about, what about that? That's a different story. Their trucks are always real solid. And yeah, so this was surprising. I know the guys over at Nismo here, and they put this together for SEMA. And interesting enough, they put a V8 in this. So this has a Titan V8 in it, and it was a swap that a lot of the aftermarket have been doing for years anyways. So they did that, but they were trying to showcase some of their parts. And the thing that you see with Toyota that you don't with Nissan is they don't put their badging all over everything. If they're going to do a part of their in-fab steps and all that, you don't see Toyota stamped everywhere. And I think Nismo has a problem with they want to put their logo just all over everything. And I've seen productions. Now they're not painted like this, but they're cut out. And I'm just like, I wouldn't buy that part. It looks good. All those parts look great, but I wouldn't buy it because I don't want your name all over parts, basically. But I was surprised when they did this at, it's a wider body too. So definitely there was ideas of the Raptor-like version that I've seen. These fenders are definitely what I saw of that truck. But it's a good looking truck, man. And I do like the fact that I know the guys over at Nismo America right now are big truck people. So they want to see Frontier really stand out. And so they've been developing a lot of these parts. These are all American made parts that are under this. So they're not, just sending something out to China to be stamped. The rock slot rails and everything are, some of it, like these tire carriers, they'll probably never put into production. But I was very surprised. I'm very happy with the wheels. Nismo has a good history with a wheel company, so they're lightweight and fun. And overall, man, I was very excited when I saw this truck. But maybe
and that really speaks to where the audience is today, right? So the Colorado went crew cab, single bed length, and everything. Trail Boss was lifted, and Z71 and ZR2. I mean, it's a really off-road focused customer for that truck. And look at that Nissan vehicle there. That's very off-road focused. What's interesting with Nissan is they kept the extended cab. And so you still has some commercial applications to it versus the Colorado. They have a work truck version of that Colorado, but I'm just not seeing it. I just don't. I mean, it's kind of I think it's just a joke. I mean, really, because there's no cab configurations. You have one cab only, and I mean, it's fine, but it's like there's a place to marketplace for an extended cab, little longer bed truck that has a little lower price point that you can build it, not buy it. And I think Nissan really is in that realm where they can fit that niche area.
Yeah, they I don't know if they would get their act together. Like you said, we were talking earlier, their focus is like I said, the people with Nismo would love to attack the truck market and really take it on. But then at the same point, Nissan's going to put every vehicle they have in one commercial because they can't afford to really advertise, their one specific vehicle. Like, I think if they would have had a Super Bowl ad or something with this truck, and just, I've said for years, man, a desert picture of that Nismo Frontier coming through the desert, and all you see is the lights and just some badass music, and then just go to our website, it would freak people out, man. But then again, Toyota really isn't into Super Bowl ads either. So
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. The thing I find fascinating with Toyota is that they are really starting now to embrace overlanding. And it's interesting. The engineers have wanted to do it for years, but the engineering has no market. No, excuse me, not market. They have no budget for that kind of stuff. Yeah. The marketing has a lot of budget, and marketing doesn't really support it. And so, I mean, it's kind of crazy because you go to Overland Expo and you feel like sometimes Overland Expo, or like it's really the FJ Cruiser Summit or FJ Cruiser events. You feel like that's Toyota supported, and Toyota corporate. It's like, yeah, it's cool. And just in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, engineers are like, screw it, we're driving out. And so engineering starting to do more stuff, Overland things. I mean, you have the chief engineer at Overland doing a table talk around the fireplace. I mean, it's like,
do they get in trouble for that kind of stuff too? I mean, obviously they know there's a limit to what they can talk about, but when they kind of go rogue and do what they want, do they?
No, they're well trained. They don't say anything. Yeah. But I mean,
I meant corporate wise. Do they go like, "Hey, what are you doing out there?" Maybe
I'm sure there's conversations like that. But I mean, why wouldn't you let your truck engineers go be with your truck customers and talk to them one-on-one and discuss things? Like that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think we're going to see the Toyota truck side get more involved in that, and I think it's a good thing overall for the company. I don't know if they're going to list everything that the consumer says, which is unfortunate. The consumer is going to go, I want roll-up windows, and I want a naturally aspirated V8, and that's all I want, right? Yeah. It's like, well, that's not the marketplace, right? And I think
they've proven you build that like the Colorado with the diesel, and then nobody buys it.
Well, yeah, and even then they're just, so it's like people can bitch about that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's engineers all have bosses, right? So even chief engineers have bosses. Everybody's got a boss. It was interesting. I did a video with the 2.7 chief engineer Kevin Luchansky, and he was talking about oil, and they had actually made that engine work on OW20 oil that affected up that way, but then they decided company wide they're gonna go with 5W30. And so I had a guy reach out to me on Facebook, a friend of mine. He's like, well, because I think he's lying, I'm gonna put OW20 in my truck. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, why wouldn't you recommend it? He goes, well, I think they're lying. There's more benefits like that. And so I was thinking about this, like, this is the fascinating idea in my head. So let's say you trust Nissan and Nissan's quality, right? And it's a good quality company. It's been pretty proven. And you want to get the Frontier because you like the look a little bit different. You want the natural aspirated V6, right? So you trust the V8 or V6. You trust Nissan Frontier. You trust Nissan buying the vehicle. And then you get home and you go, well, I don't trust the manual on what they're telling me for oil.
Yeah.
And
have you ever seen that though in forums? Like the debate that you will see a debate on recommended oil changes intervals versus what. So my my Bronco right now is 10,000 miles. What Ford says to change the oil obviously synthetic oil, but every 10,000 miles. Now, even I'm a little weary at that one. And it's in their manual, 10,000 miles. I usually go about 8,000. And dude, there's people when that Bronco first came out, at 3,000 miles is where I'm changing it. When do you allow break in? And nobody uses break in oils. It's not the 50s and 60s, man, where you're trying to seed all this. Like they're broken in from the factory. It's ready to go. The tolerances are so good now on these motors. And yeah, the oil debate trips me out.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that you gonna put 48,000 or whatever the Pro 4X would be at Frontier, 45,000, whatever deal is. You're gonna put that much money forward. You're gonna trust the brand, trust all that stuff. Then you want to question them on everything. And I just can't wrap my head around this. And so I actually asked my friend, I said, why is this? And he goes, because what I've read and seen. And so they let people, so he's basically letting people on the internet influence his maintenance decisions based on somebody's knowledge from who's been a mechanic for 45 years. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, if you've been a mechanic for that many years, that's a problem. Because today's engines aren't close to what was the prior generation stuff. So it's like this new age stuff. So I go to engineers, and I remember talking to some Chevy engineer once, and I said, let's talk about carbon buildup these engines, right? So everything gets turbocharged, and you have this carbon buildup. And he was like, "Are you gonna ask me that question on camera?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, thank God! I have so much to say on this." He goes, "I get on forums, I read this crap, and I just freaking." So I literally asked him a question. I gave him the microphone. I basically stood back for at least 10 minutes. He went this whole rant fest about direct injection, and it's like, well, you could tell these engineers are going, that's not the way it is, not the way it is. I had the interview with the guy, and I was asking about aluminum blocks, right? So if you go to any old school guy and say it's got aluminum block, they're like, that thing's gonna warp. It can't handle the stress. It's not gonna work out, right? And he's like, and I said, aluminum's aluminum, right? He goes, well, yeah, but the alloy we're using is so much different these days. Aluminum as a metal, right? It's been around since the Stone Age, right? It's not changed, but the alloys they put into it and the way it's set up these days is so dramatically different. He's like, well, no, we saved weight, and the aluminum is so strong it can handle the compression of the engine. And then they're like, well, it's a high compression engine. He goes, no. It's actually lower compression engine with the turbocharger. If you look at the compression engine, then it's like, well, obviously a V6 would be less complicated than the turbo 4-cylinder, right? He's like, no, I'd argue the V6 is more complicated. So but the comments
it's like you're saying. So if the manufacturer recommends on an oil change of like 10,000 miles, we'll say, do you not it's like the people doubt that they ever actually check that. I think people just start to think, well, they're just throwing darts at it. Whatever it says on the dartboard is now that's the new standard for engines.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah, God, that
it's
would
so
be
weird. Like my uncle bought a Toyota Sienna, and he loves these. He's actually gonna write a love letter to Toyota, the best quality built vehicle he's ever seen, the best quality he's ever seen in a new vehicle. He loves it. Gets 40 miles a gallon around town because he just drives electric motor only, keeps his foot on the accelerator. Freaking loves it. He's in his 60s now. He gets his oil changed every 2,000 miles because engines are expensive, oil's cheap, Tim. And I'm like, okay, but you just talked about how much you love the quality of this van, but now you want to change the oil more often.
Yeah.
it just doesn't. I don't know. I feel like that generation is going to eventually phase out. Because the next generation coming up is, just follow the manual, right? So, for example, when I grew up in Michigan, it was it 6 months, 3,000 miles, 3 months, 6 months, whatever the deal was. I mean, that was the old school thing. It was every 3 months, I think you had to change your oil. And you could do you could ask for the receipts. If they didn't change your oil every 3,000 miles, you were going to get a discount because they didn't take care of the vehicle well, one of those things. And now you have this whole generation going, no, you go 10,000 miles. Oh my God, that's not the way it's going to be. That's freaking ridiculous. And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
I saw somebody with they put a new diff cover on their axle and
yeah,
right at around 1,000 miles when they just bought this vehicle, and they were like, I couldn't believe how awful the oil was and the gear fluid and that thing was, and I was like, what?
right. I saw a photo online and people were like, they're like, look, here's your shiny clean oil. That's not good. Here's your used oil a little bit more. That's actually good. Like
Yeah,
it's like your perception of what oil is wrong. You don't want to be able to pour out clean oil
yeah,
like that you haven't used it. It hasn't done its job. It's like oil shouldn't look black, but it should not look like it's brand new pulling out of an engine. And
right.
yeah, I don't know. I understand automakers now, like the Chevy, they don't even have an oil change interval. That blows people's mind. They have an oil life indicator, which I think is a more smart way to do it. So oil life indicator takes in your driving habits and then it determines when to change oil. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nissan does this next Frontier. They do it throughout the lineup because synthetic oils have gotten so good. We've just been trained to think different things, and it's like
Yeah.
once we get out of that training, hey, it makes a big difference.
You're not popping I don't know if you remember the old cans that you had to pop and put the little filler thing in. It's
Yeah,
not those days anymore, man.
I know, and it's so this is another interesting piece. I was going to ask you about this, your thoughts. So the Colorado on the driver's side does not have an A pillar handle,
Mhm.
and so I was thinking, I don't recall if the Frontier has the A pillar handle on the inside.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of it right now. You can see it on the passenger side. I don't remember on the driver's side,
So
because a lot of the side curtain airbags now is where that's going.
well, yeah, that and it's interesting because I think discussing this, the Tacoma when it first came out, and the engineering attitude was like, well, just grab the steering wheel and pull yourself in. And I was like, oh my God, you can't touch the steering. It's like you don't grab the
Yeah.
steering wheel. Alignment and engineering is going, just grab the steering wheel. Like they're like, what's the big deal? But I mean, they were just like they were shocked by the pushback on that because they're just like, that's
Well, there used to be an old school thing of people grabbing that, and
yeah,
they would screw up everything, but everything's so drive by wire now. The way they mount that stuff into it's not you're not gonna phase it anymore. But no, I used to have a boss that would be like, "Don't be grabbing that steering wheel when you're getting into that truck," and I'm like, "Okay, cool."
right. I
But
mean,
yeah, so
so
I want to bring this up because you can go ahead there, Tim. But I see if we can see it. Yeah, you can see a grab handle right here on the Frontier. And I'm pretty sure there is one on the driver's side.
yeah, I mean that I think that's what speaks to the Frontier, right? So getting back to the point where it's natural aspirated V6.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's an old school mentality. They want that natural aspirated V6, and that's fine. I'm not going to criticize those people at all. They've had experience over the lifetime that have taken them one way or the other. But it is interesting to have these discussions about, well, do you want a driver's side grab handle? I mean,
yeah,
it's and then well, like the lighting situation on the Colorado where you have to push button the lights along the top, the
yeah.
icons, like. Chevy's like, do you even need a turn dial for the headlight switch? And people are like, oh, of course I do. I obviously I do. And so then
Well,
it creates these questions like,
when you broke that news, I was thinking about it. I was in our Bronco the other day, and I got thinking about it. I honestly have never used the dial.
right?
You know what I mean? Because the
Yeah.
auto light function is so good. I remember the first time testing the Bronco, and it was my first time using the auto system like that. And it never dawned on me that I wasn't turning on the on and off brights. And I was taking it back to Ford, and I was filling it up, and I was like, did I bright this guy? Or like I was like, holy shit, I've never used the
Right.
actual on off switch for the brights now. But I will say, I do think I still think that's one of those things you need a option for that. I don't think going into the screen is a big deal, but that's what you get with Nissan, old school tech.
Right. Well,
And
I think that's why the Frontier is going to continue to sell is because I think two things. First of all, Nissan's not going to update it for a long period of time because their directions in other ways. But
are
that
you telling me
customer,
this isn't updated already? Adding
uh-huh,
black features?
the Midnight Edition, fantastic, the Stormtrooper. But I think you can find those customers who are going to be turned off by the new things from the Colorado and
Yeah.
Tacoma. Tacoma's going to turn people off for sure. It's going to go to this Nissan Frontier, and it's going because they want the old school stuff. There's a story. I didn't comment on it, but I was going to get your viewpoint. There's an ongoing debate in auto journalism and online about screens, right? So these big infotainment screens, are they the devil? Are they actually better than buttons? Is the debate over them a bunch of nonsense? There's a editor, John Neff from Motor1.com, and I know John, and he wrote a story, and I was reading a story about how screens are not the devil. Like, you guys just need to go over it, and this is a much better thing than what you guys think of. And so it was interesting because the Frontier doesn't have a big screen like the other brands do,
Right.
and so I don't know. Yeah, here we go. I'll throw it up on my end.
I think for you'll have to maneuver it or whatever it is. Yeah, no, I'm torn on screens. At one, in my younger days, I was definitely all about features, tech was fun. And I do know, just dealing with the Bronco, because I keep mentioning the Bronco because it's the latest thing I have sitting in my driveway daily. I'll go to get into that, and the Apple CarPlay will be either, because it's in the driveway, I'll turn it on and it's instantly synced to Kelly's, who's, sitting in the house. So it syncs to that, and I'll try to get into the damn tech of it to do it. And to this day, I've had that truck for over a year now, and I'll still stumble trying to figure out how do I get it to connect to my phone and not Kelly's phone. And it is somewhat, if I was driving, it would be very distracting to do that. But I think that's a generational thing too. I think if my daughter, who, she was at a year old, honestly, messing with an iPhone and could get through stuff pretty quickly. And I think the older we get, we're stuck in a certain pattern of technology, and the younger generation will adapt faster.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with new technology that often. like I've dealt with it for years, So this is the interesting debate, and you'll appreciate this. This is a Porsche Panorama's button palooza. And I appreciate this because it reminds me of the Nissan Armada, Infiniti QX80.
Yeah.
All these buttons, right? So trying to press stuff, small screen, versus this Jeep Grand Wagoneer's got 7 screens, right? So
we've both done time in this thing, and this is a monster of tech.
Right. So which way do you go? You have the Model 3 interior with 1 screen and 2 scroll knobs, so nothing going on. This is what people tell me they want. They just want basically an Apple CarPlay screen inside, and they're like, I don't know why automakers make their own infotainment screens. Just put me an Apple CarPlay screen in there. And Apple's got some software now. They're trying to make that happen. It's got to work with the HVAC system and the basic principles. What you use a screen for. But I think it's a very interesting question. Like, where's the mix there? And I'm driving a Honda Passport this week, and Honda put a knob back in for the volume knob because people bitch so much about losing a volume knob. And the other setup wasn't good. It was a swipe with your finger. It was too confusing. It didn't work. So I don't know. It's an interesting debate. And you look at the Nissan Frontier interior, and you definitely have a mix between the Porsche Panorama's Button Palooza and the Jeep Wagoneer's 4 screens. And so
here's the interior of the Nissan, and there's some buttons, but once again, it's not ridiculous. I think I will say for Nissan though, I remember even when I had a 17 Titan, I remember, and it had a 7.5-inch screen. It was fine, but I do remember going, man, their tech is like already like kind of backdated a little bit. Like in this radio, I will say this radio functions well.
Yeah.
All the stuff functions well, but it does feel a little dated. But as far as the interior of all this, I like their interior of this truck. I think it's great. I do worry that some of the stuff like the AC, if you've been in a Titan, this, like you're just like, oh, well, this is, but which has been around since 20. So you would have thought with their flagship, because for trucks, the Frontier is their flagship vehicle. And you would have thought they would have really came out, here's the next generation of what we're doing with vehicles. But Nissan, unfortunately, is they're always fighting bankruptcy, it seems like. So they're doing
a little bit in the weeds as far as leadership goes. There's a question in chat about the Canyon. No, I do not know when a new GMC Canyon is coming out. There's should be a press drive. So the Colorado press drive is this month. Canyon should be next month or so. And then they're building them in the factory right now. So it's just going to take a while to roll out, as all new vehicles do. Take a while to roll out.
Yeah, what's up with the Colorado? Like, I know they're building them right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those start.
And
People getting notification that their truck has either been built or it's being built as we speak, and they're starting to ship them out. But it's interesting because I go to these factories and they're like, hey, we build 200 trucks a day or whatever it is. Remember, you worked at Nissan factory, right? So you
Yep.
built all these vehicles a day, but then it takes about a week or a week and a half to get from the factory on a transport, which is a third party, then ship to the dealer, and then dealer's got to process it for at least a day and a half or two because they get forgetful, and then it takes a couple days to get to the network. Remember, General Motors was talking about actually developing their own fleet of transport vehicles because they figured they could accelerate that process by a good week and actually move inventory off of their factory floor much faster because it's this transport issue. Most of them trucks go to most plants are built and either the railway builds it in or they're actually purposely built next to a railhead. And the idea there is that the trains pull up, they load trucks in the railhead and they ship them out. But that's like 2-3 weeks of getting to a actual customer. And you can't go to the factory and actually get one anymore. By the way,
when we launched the Infiniti, I worked for Nissan when we launched the Infiniti JX35, which is now called the QX60. That was interesting to me because it's the first time I got to see from here inside the plant what it took to launch a vehicle, and it was 6 months prep to start building that, and then you would start building a little bit. And but what we would do is they would sit out in the lots, and it was like they were building up a mass inventory. They didn't want to, because when they start shipping them out, they want every dealer. They don't want one particular area to just start getting them. They want to be able to. We have to spread them out kind of evenly. So we would build of that vehicle. I think we were only building a couple hundred a day because it was an Infiniti, so it wasn't going to be a hot seller. But they probably let a couple thousand sit out before they even put them on rails and in trucks and started shipping them out. So it was pretty interesting from that standpoint.
Yeah, because you don't want somebody like in New York City flying into Montana with, I'm going to pay $10,000 over a sticker right now today if you just give me the truck.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, dealers want that, but it creates this really bad name for automakers who it's like, oh, we're just auctioning off the highest bidder. And it just creates I
thought they did that at an auction in Arizona. And so you could get VIN 1. I thought they were proud of those.
They do that. Well, they do that for charity, which I'm fine with, I guess. It's kind of weird. I don't know why. I mean, it was interesting. The GMC Hummer's going back up for sale, VIN 1. Actually, the guy bought it for like some absurd amount of money, and then he gave money away, then he bought it. It's like, yes, tell me you have too much money when you're going to screw around with this in auction and just, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So you're going to see, it's going to be rolling out. So my brother actually ordered a Canyon, and they're telling him probably like mid this month or 1st of April, something like that, will be when it gets to deal a lot. So that makes me believe that if we are going to do a first drive, which we should do one, it should be in March sometime. And I have not been asked about it. I don't have any invites, so.
It's a good looking truck, I'll say that. Did you get to spend any time with it at the Chicago Auto Show, the AT4?
No, I saw it all behind the scenes, and I did the stuff, and it's interesting. Auto shows, I just don't like getting into new vehicles too often. Auto shows because the lighting's weird, nothing's powered on, and the setting is just bad to try to really evaluate it because you have so much noise and things going on. And so, I mean, I do get in them, but I people ask me all the time, they're like, hey, why don't you compare the Canyon to something else? I'm like, well, I want to spend time with it. So for example, with the Colorado, I was not, and it's my fault, I was not clear on what the difference between the Trail Boss and Z71 was. Mm-hmm. I didn't spend enough time reading through every single detail. And honestly, the press release can be confusing. Because it's like, why would I buy a Canyon over Colorado, and what's the differences? And until you actually, I think, like, for example, for myself, get behind the wheel. When I got behind the wheel of Trail Boss and I got behind the wheel of Z71, I was like, oh, these are completely different trucks. These are completely different customers. Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, it starts dawning in. Frontier is a good example too, where it's like that 3.8 was so confusing, and then you drive 3.8 and you're like, oh, okay, I see why they did. You start making sense to it. So like, yeah, I want to wait until I can find the Canyon first drive. People also said, like, why don't you build and price one? Because, you can always build and price everything as you know, but until you spend time with it, really know that feature or not feature. Like, for example, there's no auxiliary switches inside of the Trail Boss, and there's
Yeah.
no 120 volt plug in the bed. And I was like, well, this is confusing. And then people like pointed out in my video, they're like, hey, there's an accessory for this. And it's basically an electrical box that you kind of put in the vehicle. And I was thinking to myself, like, I could have talked about that in the video, but I think that should be stock. And I also think that I don't know where you put that switches in. Like, where do you put it? Like the cabin's not designed with all this massive amount of room. And so where do you put this stuff? And I think that's the same thing with when I drive other vehicles. I just want to experience them before I, make a final statement of what I like, what I don't like.
Yeah, and like the auto shows are tough. Of course, I'm not as experienced as you are with that, but it's tough. Like you said, you have all this noise. You're trying to focus in and do a somewhat quality video, and then you've got some guy that just doesn't give a damn. He's opening the door beside you, shutting it, and you're just like, which I had a very part. There was some upper scale journalists, writers, not video people, writers that were purposely in one of my videos just being an asshole. I was like, y'all need to F off, man. And I ended up, I give them a kind of a nasty look, and they ended up moving away. But I was just like, look, people, like, everybody gets time with these vehicles. It's not like, but like you're saying, when you're trying to hurry around, you've got maybe 10 minutes to kind of walk and talk about a vehicle. You're going to miss little details. You have to live with these vehicles. And that's why I've been, privately, we've been pushing to get press vehicles, because it's hard to start breaking down stuff in our unique way. I mean, because every guy, like from you, Doug DeMuro, whoever, they have unique ways of talking about it. That's why people like their channels. And you have to spend a week with that vehicle. It's so important, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you experience things that you don't expect. Like, I have a Sequoia outside, and I have still the Tundra. I need to sell on Monday, but I have tow mirrors in this Sequoia. Like, I don't have tow mirrors in the Tundra, so the mirrors are interesting. And it's like I want to talk about just the tow mirrors. I want to talk about just these individual pieces, because now I've experienced it with the Tundra for a year. I know what to really dial in at, and that's the experience level that you have to just. The more you're in the business, the more you get that, the more you get going on stuff. And I think that's gonna be really interesting, especially with the Nissan Frontier as we move forward. Is I want to know, will that Frontier hold up over the course of time? That's always kind of my question, right? So everything comes out, it's latest, greatest, newest. It's really cool. It's got all this new technology, all this kind of stuff. And then in 4 or 5 years, is it still the coolest, or did the shine come off the apple? Like, where are we at with that? And I think the Frontier, and that's gonna be my worry, is they're not gonna update it, and it's gonna become really old yet again. And then they'll have, they'll do a new update and bring it up to par. And then as they bring it up to the level of everybody else, so it's just, it's like, it used to be every vehicle had a 7-year cycle life. So launch, and then 3.5 years in, 3-4 years in, they had a mid-cycle refresh. So maybe a little interior changes, front fascia changes, rear bumper, and maybe a powertrain change. Mm-hmm. And then they'd have little packages as they went through the life cycle. Then 7 years, you get a brand new vehicle. Now Ford is destroyed that, because Ford's like updating the F-150 like every 20 days. I mean, it's just crazy for that car. And so it's like customers now are going, well, holy cow! Now the expectations change, right? And also the customers change. Like, the younger generation is going, well, why do I want to wait for the new one? I'll just go buy a different brand. Like, and that's like, oh, wait a minute. They're not brand loyal like they used to be. They're not, Nissan fans for life kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And, you got to stay more competitive these days. And you typically, automakers' technology in vehicles is always behind the curveball on cell phones and consumer electronics, because of the life cycle and development cycle of vehicles. But you really can't do that anymore. Like, the marketplace is changing, and I think Tesla's proven that they've got that tech customer who really expects over-the-air update. They expect 400 miles of range, or 40 miles more range for the over-the-air update, right? I mean, the expectations are so wildly different than they used to be, and so I really want to look at that Frontier in 5-6 years and say, did it age well? Did it not age well? Like, where we're at with this thing.
Well, I think the one concern I had was with the Frontier is it looking too much like Titan. Titan doesn't sell. Clearly, there's a person here, Nissan should save the Titan. It's such an underrated truck. It's a good truck, but like Tim just said, it's interior wise, tech wise, they're never going to bring it up to standards. The V8, the V8, that is a hoss. it will run. And I loved my time in that truck. I did 3 years with that truck, and it was a good truck. But Nissan, for whatever reason, they're a one trick pony. Like they're a train that's only on one rail, and when that they stop at that station, they move it over to the next one, then they go back the other way. And Frontier's developed, and so they've moved on to something else. If you guys would see their corporate headquarters here in Nashville, it's a blip on the screen versus GM, Ford, Ram, and some of these guys. Like they don't have here in the US, they don't have the resources they need. They're a global company, and unfortunately, Japan is where it's all at. And I know, Tim, you've been to their HQ in Japan, and if this truck was in Japan, it would be the rage. Like Nismo would be all over it. They would attack it, and they don't. You've talked about this before. They do not. The Japanese in general do not understand the American truck. Nope. They I know with Nissan there was a debate about the exhaust sound, and I think it sounds good from the factory, but the engineers here wanted it to sound better. I think you've talked to something about that to Toyota. They want to do something, and then conservative Japanese culture is like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they want a diesel. I mean, it's always funny to me. People always pick on the chief engineer for the Tundra for all the reasons they have, whatever. But it was like, well, I wish he would have built a truck that with a diesel 3/4 ton. I'm like, his favorite truck is a diesel 3/4 ton with a lift kit and 35s. Like that's what he wants, but he can't have that. And he's the chief engineer, but he can't get what he wants. So just think about that for a moment. Like that's how much power. I mean, that's how much bosses have, right? So, and you look at the Nissan Frontier people. A lot of those advanced development people, they're building cool Frontiers. Like they're building lifts and they're putting tires. I mean, so like they're fans of the truck. They're putting the stuff on there, but they get frustrated because they can't move the needle as far as they want to move the needle because of restraints from the mothership bases. A lot of those Japanese companies.
Yeah, I can't remember. You may know his name, the Nissan truck guy. Gosh, it slips my mind over here. And he was a big fan of the Titan. He's a Tennessee guy, which was nice. He was somebody that grew up with trucks. And yeah, when he went to get his Frontier, he bought it here locally, and the dealership were doing lift kits and all this, and that's how he wanted his truck, and that's how he got it. And Nissan probably would have leased him one that he couldn't have done anything with, and he chose to go buy his own product and do it how he built it, how he wanted it to look, which is a very American thing. But it strikes me funny though with Japanese culture versus American culture, because in one hand you look at the tuner scene over in Japan and you're like, they do the craziest stuff. I don't know, Tim, if you've ever seen like the Lamborghinis they do, which is weird that they would buy Italian sports cars, but they put all this crazy neon, like I forget what they call the culture that does that. But then you see them do that with the tuners and stuff in Japan, and then how they view a truck is like completely different. Like you don't do those kind of things. So that's where aftermarket's really picked up for the Nissan brand in general. And I wanted to bring this up. This is my friends over at Nistech. This is their Frontier they built. For one, I love this blue color. I think Nissan, the red and the blues that they use are just great looking colors.
They are. Really, yep.
I would have never thought to put like orange accents with this thing the way they've done it, but I think it looks great. They built this for SEMA, and it shows that there's a lot of potential with this thing. Those are 35-inch tires, if I remember right, under this truck. So there's a lot of potential to it. But if you ever expect a brand like Nissan to do this from the factory, forget it. Like even the Nismo stuff, I was at their booth in Chicago. They were showing, they had a couple really cool lifted Frontiers sitting there, but it was all crap that you had to buy after the fact. And I think that's one thing where Ford, I think with they've proven the case with Bronco. People will spend money to have it from the factory lifted, done all this stuff to it. I think we'll see it with Ranger a little bit. Obviously, the Ranger Raptor's coming, so that's going to be a, hey, we've lifted this vehicle. We've done all this stuff. Colorado Trail Boss comes with a factory lift. Now, would I want overlong use? Would it be what I want? Probably not. And I think some cases people want to make it their own. They want to make their own personality in these vehicles, but
you get the warranty though too, right? So
yeah,
the full warranty. So I got a question on this truck. Did you have to lift that truck for 35s on it, or 35s fifth? No lift.
No, there's a lift on it. This is a lift company, so that was their part of their deal.
That was my joke from everybody's comments on forums, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
can I fit 35s, no lift?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what's the largest tire I can put under it?
With no lift. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Well, and in some of this, I think even to put 33s under this truck, there's a little bit of changing the fenders to do it to make it work. But much like these Chevrolet, for whatever reason, they think a 33-inch tire is in their full size trucks trips me out. Those tires look tiny under this big wheel wells they've developed, and Nissan has a problem a little bit with some fender issues of their own. But I wanted to talk about this, and then there's another company called Z1 Off-Road, who once again they're more local to me. They're out of Georgia, and they're doing a lot with these trucks, man. And this company here, where my friends over at Nistech, they're pretty much just specialized in suspension. This company here really goes after the whole truck, and they will help you. They will tune the vehicle for you. They will they attack these vehicles, and they got a lot of money behind them, and they do a really good job. So it's Z1 Off-Road there I wanted to kind of give a shout out to, because the Nissan brand, Tim, you've seen Toyota, everybody, there's Toy Tech, there's all kinds of aftermarket companies. If you want to do something with it, you with your you lifted your Tundra, Rough Country had all kinds of stuff. Like Nissan, they don't look at Nissan like that anymore, and slowly Nissan's starting to get looked at. The sales have, truck sales, it all matters. Like no aftermarket company wants to look at you if you're selling 5,000 trucks.
yeah,
They're just never going to look at
volume, right? Because they need searching. So, and same thing with our business, right? I can't. People are always like, well, I think you should go buy this truck. You're going to like this truck, XYZ, whatever. I said, well, it's honestly, I don't buy the trucks I like. I buy trucks people are searching for. I go to Google Trends all the time, and I'm putting in search terms, and like, I can't. People are like, well, you should go buy the Titan or go buy the Frontier, like we talked about last year. I'm like, I can't. And
I bugged him for a long time to buy a Frontier, by the way. I bugged him for a long time.
There's no search traffic on that stuff, and it's just a business decision at the end of the day. What's interesting with me is all the aftermarket stuff. It's like, so I got tons of aftermarket parts in my house at the moment because I've been behind installing because it's been freaking cold. But I'm struggling with aftermarket because I want to do stock versus stock stuff, and then once you modify the truck, it's hard to do a stock versus stock comparison. Yeah. Especially fuel economy,
like you go do fuel economy test.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm constantly fighting this battle between aftermarket wants to send me all the stuff, and I want to do videos on it because it's interesting. Some of the stuff's pretty interesting to talk about, but I don't want to modify my truck too much where I can't do stock to stock. So when I put the leveling kit from Rough Country on the Tundra, it was because I had done so much stuff already with that, and so I'm kind of holding off on doing stuff. I have a Silverado. I'm holding off doing stuff in Silverado because I need to do a 100-mile test. I need to get a baseline stuff. I need to get some baseline data before I do anything to modify it to see what the difference is. And I got additive companies. It's a diesel. So I got Amsoil sending me stuff, and this company sending me stuff, and Hot Shots sending me stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, and it's like, you can go down this rabbit hole.
You're going to look like a NASCAR driver. You're going to be in a suit.
I know, right?
Your live stream.
But yeah, it's just crazy. Cause I think once you open, it's like anything. Once you start modifying your truck on aftermarket, you really open this Pandora's box of all these things you can bring into it, and where do you stop? Where's the line? And I'm really still cautious in that stuff because I still want the channel to be about new vehicles. Because I don't want another brodozer. The world does not need another brodozer. We just don't.
You mean you're not going to open up pickup truck plus SUV talk off-road channel?
No, I can't even follow stuff we have currently. How am I going to do 7 channels?
Tim doesn't even know what he's doing right now.
Yeah. I'm like, today's Monday, right? Oh no. Tuesday? Oh yeah. So no, I mean, it's like how far do you push that, and how far do people want to watch it? And then if you look at the bread and butter of the entire truck market, it's crew cab, it's a short bed, it's not modified. I mean that's basically bread and butter everywhere. So it's you run down this slippery slope of the modification stuff, and then sometimes you don't want to, right? So the thing is, like the Frontier, you shouldn't have to modify the Frontier to make it look more badass. There should be a version. It's like the ZR2, the Colorado ZR2, right? That thing looks pretty badass, and I can't see many people going, "Oh, I want to put my own lift on it, put my own tires on it, whatever," because it is expensive to do. And here it comes from factory ready to go. And so it just seems like that is where Nissan could go with Frontier and really build more of a name out in the marketplace and get people excited for the vehicle.
Well, they do the Pro 4X, and they used to call it the off-road. They changed it to Pro 4X, which it was amazing name changes, how that freaks a buying community out.
Yep.
Like they used to call it Nismo Off Road, and now it's called Pro 4X, which I didn't dislike Pro 4X. I don't like calling trucks Nismo because I think that for that brand, Nismo is associated with tuner cars.
Yep.
Like I think Nissan needed to, much like Ford Performance, they just had to let's just call it Ford Performance, not SVT. Let's just and that includes everything. But Nismo is so, you think of Nismo, you think of Fast and Furious or whatever. That's just what you
I look
think.
at trucks.
And that's great. That's great branding for their cars.
Mhm.
Like to instantly say Nismo, and in your mind, you know exactly what you're thinking of that car. But Nissan needs to with their truck line, and I think Frontier is about to be their only truck in that line. They need to they need to have a performance division, and it doesn't have to be. It could still be the Nismo, the small. Because trust me, Nismo here in the United States is in a closet. Like they don't have a big. They're not in this big 20,000 square foot warehouse doing whatever they want. But if they would do that and get a performance division and then have a Halo truck, much like, Tim, you've seen the picture that I had. They were developing a badass Raptor like midsize truck, and it could have been the Halo vehicle. If they sold 200 a month, who freaking cares?
Right.
Because I used to, when I was a kid, I was a traveling musician. I used to work at a local guitar shop. I ran that as well. We would have the most expensive Fender 1954 Stratocaster that at the time was like, oh God, $20,000. You had it hanging up on the wall to bring people in to look at that, and then they settled for what you can afford.
Right.
And I think that's where Ford wins out a lot with Raptor.
Mm-hmm.
People see it in the dealership and they're like, they dream about it, and then reality kicks in of they max out their credit, whatever they do, and they end up with a normal, XLT F-150.
Two-wheel drive.
I was that kid.
Long bed.
I stupidly leased an F-150, and my payment was like $400 a month because I'd flip cars. Just being young and dumb, I kept flipping cars, and the only way I could get into an F-150 was leasing it. And my payment was still, at the time, this is 97.
Yeah.
So you could lease a truck for $150 a month at the time.
Yeah.
But stupidly, I wanted a big F-150 and settled for the base F-150 manual transmission V6 engine. But it got me around. It was fun.
Yeah.
But if Nissan would do that, I think it would help them a lot. I want to show this real quick because this is their Pro 4X that you see here. It doesn't, like you're saying, Tim, it just doesn't, other than can see a skid plate because of the angle of the photo. There's nothing about that vehicle that makes you go, that's a badass off-roader.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and they could do a lot more. Like if you take that versus the ZR2, I mean, it's just like, wow. What, the ZR2's got a bull bar. It's got lights. Let
me pull up a ZR2 real quick. Cause I'm curious. I mean, obviously I know what it looks like, but I want for our viewers here real quick. Bear with me. They're stupid. Why have they not updated their website? They still show the 22s.
I know.
But even at that, so that's the 22 ZR2.
Yeah.
That looks more exciting than this.
Yeah.
And obviously wheels and tires have there's a certain clientele that will accept that this thing's going to from the factory kind of ride or a little rougher or be a little noisier. But I think that's the ding of this truck is look at those tires. Those are awful looking for your off-road tires, not the wheels. The tires can change a vehicle's so much.
Mm-hmm.
Can make it look really cool. I mean, once again, old truck, you've got some aggressive looking Goodyear tires. It's lifted, and there is a slight lift to this truck versus the other, the SVs and stuff. But no, that's Nissan for you. And it's unfortunately it's a company that I love because they've done a lot for my community here. So I'm always going to be a fan of that company because anytime they took a chance on Middle Tennessee in the 80s, and they've really made Middle Tennessee what it is. So I'm a fan of that company. They've put a few generations of my friends and family to work. So I'm always going to preach up Nissan like that and be happy for it. Tim, what do you got coming up, man? What besides if you ever finish a Frontier video that you've got, anything fun coming up this week?
Yeah, I mean, I got a Ram 1500 Limited versus the Silverado High Country. It's coming up on Tuesday, interestingly enough, it's $11,000 difference in price.
Wow.
So there's my video. Where the hell's $11,000 at? I got the Sequoia TRD Pro, which has got a really interesting exhaust note. I need to do a video on that. I still have Chicago news. I did Trailblazer walk around Chicago. I have a Mazda CX-50, which is not a great
launch that you'll want to of that.
And I need to wash my truck. I have a GMC Denali Ultimate versus a Silverado High Country. As soon as I get my truck washed, I'm gonna finish that video. So
what a great segment for you. I need to wash my truck segment. And
I do.
You just go outside and just BS about a truck.
So here's a funny story. I got plates for the Silverado, and I haven't put the front plate on because it's been so dirty. I don't know where usually a little
dot is.
Yeah, I can't find them. The bumper's so dirty. So I'm like literally I threw it in the center console. Nobody's gonna pull me over for it. It doesn't really matter. But I'm like, I need to go wash it so I can actually put the plate on. Like that's where I'm at.
One of those final ones that are holding on to that front plate, huh?
Yes, we are still one of those states with and I don't know.
Do you see a lot of people in your state that don't do it?
For a while, it's in the windshield kind of situation. And then I never did it on the Ford I had a Ford for a year and I never put the front plate on because I'm like, I'm not gonna drill into this bumper to put a plate on. Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
And then eventually the guy, I traced on the guy who bought these in Colorado, so I know he's got a front plate on it now because Colorado's also a front plate state. So I just need to get it done. It's negative 14 degrees that a day in the morning. That's what we woke up to. So the car washes are closed. A little hard to get out there. And I'm waiting. I think I may wash it tomorrow because I'm waiting for the snow to melt and to dry. Right.
Well, knowing you, because I know where your office is, and you're probably looking right outside to all this horrible snow.
Actually, it's really foggy this morning because it's 32 degrees this morning, so it's a weird
change.
Yeah, so it's going to be a soupy mess for a week or so.
Hey, hunting. I know that we're talking midsize trucks, but hunting question, man. When I don't know what your season is for hunting up there, but do you see with the big weather changes like that, do the deer just start really coming out and? Yeah. Is it still hunting season in your area?
Bow hunting. I think not anymore.
Yeah, you could from your guys, if you could see Tim's backyard, like the view he has from what is the plateau or whatever?
Scottsbluff National Monument. I had deer there's a field across the street from me it's basically become housing at some point. There was deer out there this year. The geese were all over that field. First time ever all over the field, which one crapped in my windshield. And it's like outside the line for the wiper in the Silverado. So every time I drive, I see a little poop smear on the passenger side so I can wash the truck. But no, I think bow hunting goes through December. And you'll see it if we have a really good cold snap. So they're up in the bluffs, and if the cold snap goes through or a bunch of snow comes through and it covers up the vegetation, the deer keep coming down. They keep coming down closer and closer. And I woke up one morning and I had a bunch of deer track outside my front yard. So they basically walked around the field, walked around my front yard, ate my grass, walked back to the monument.
Hey man, little lawnmowers for you. Right? That's all right.
Yeah, so leaving their little poop everywhere. But no, I mean, we have a lot of deer coming down, and I shot a deer last year with the AT4X, which is funny. People
that's a great video. You guys need to watch
$70,000 truck.
Yeah, you guys need to watch this video because Tim, I know you were a little nervous what GM was going to say when you had blood all in the back of their truck, and they actually loved it, right?
Yeah, I actually showed a GM engineer at the Colorado Drive the photo because the PR team asked me to show it to him, and he was like, "Man," he goes, "That's really cool."
Yeah,
because I had that trick tailgate. I didn't realize that the rubber ceiling on the trick tailgate wasn't as close as I want it to be, and so it looked like a Halloween thing because that blood coming through those sections of the trick tailgate. And I wasn't going to do a story, and then Jill was like, "You have to do the video." I'm like, "All right, so she's like, do it." And I'm like, "Fine."
Well, that's a little iffy video because you never know how YouTube reacts, and
I was very clear. I'm like, "This is not safe for work. I'm not showing it. I didn't show the deer when I cut it up and all that stuff. I just showed all the blood in the back and everything." But the really funny part of the whole story was I had actually washed it because the month before I had a Silverado and I went deer hunting. And I shot a Silverado, and we hauled it back with a Silverado because we, had it up.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually wash the bed because I was like a bed truck. They just go to the car wash, whatever. Well, it turns out with that one, they didn't go to the car wash. The guy came up, picked it up, and take it right to the auction. And so the press manager had to convince the guy it wasn't human blood; it actually was deer blood. And so I do the Sierra a month later. I had a Sierra and I'm hunting with it's not. I didn't ask GM for vehicles. It's just how they come up with my rotation. And so I get done, I take it in town, I wash it, and then literally I was still washing. I still see like this watery blood coming out. So I wash it some more, whatever. Well, then I talked to the press manager about 3 weeks later. He goes, "Yeah," he goes, "the guy in Utah got it," and he says, "I see a little blood back here. Did Estrel have this last?" And
The
I did
deer
not realize
slaughterer
that
back
I had a
there.
reputation for doing this. I typically, in the case of Silverado, when we had deer hunting, the outside was clean. I didn't realize, I forgot the bed was dirty, and
Mhm.
usually they just go power wash and it's fine. But yeah, so it
So
took me like, I spent like
you
20
need
bucks to power wash for the Sierra, and I was kind of pissed when I heard there's still blood back there.
that's what you need to do with these midsize trucks, man. Show that they're hunter vehicles, and that's another segment for you too, is hunting with Tim. And
Yeah,
yeah,
the problem with hunting with Tim is it's like, uh, you want to talk about opinions in the truck world?
oh,
Oh, oh, golly. There's no winning in hunting world.
yeah, no. Well, Tim, I appreciate you being on the show today. Once again, guys, go check out he did a video on the hunting thing, and it's really funny because, for one, you guys, I'm used to rednecks out here in hunting blinds and all this, and you're just sitting in a nice cozy truck waiting for a deer to kind of walk in front of you, and it's like, oh, get out of the truck, put my coffee down just a second, and
Yeah, it
which
was
reminds me of, so I used to have some acreage here, and my neighbor next door was like, "Hey man, you care if I ever shoot deer from your back field?" And I was like, "I don't care, man." He's like, "Cool," because he goes, "I can sit on my back deck." He's like, "I'll have my coffee on top of the deck rail." He goes, I whip, my rifle out. He goes, "I'm just sitting there." He goes, I'm just sighting it in, and I may need a drink of coffee, just set it there and just wait." And he goes, and then I'll drag him out of your backfield. And I was like, "Sounds fun to me, man." I don't
Yeah,
care.
I mean, people were giving me crap about it, and they're like, "That's not real hunting. You sat in your truck and had the heated seats on, that kind of stuff." I'm like, "Well, I could go sit and froze my ass off in a deer blind, or
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the deer walked 40 yards in front of me, and then I get on my truck, lined up with my rifle, and they just stopped there and looked at me. I'm like, I could go hike in the bluffs and hike in for 6 hours and get something and hike back out and cut it up, but I'm like, why not just shoot it right
But and
here?
you're not
And I
shooting
drove over
really
and
for
picked it up.
sport either. You're shooting for because you eat the deer. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a
No. I mean, so I have kids, and so I started. I'm not a lifelong hunter. I only started hunting when I was in my I was probably 38, 39 when I started hunting.
Mhm,
And the reason I did it was two reasons. First, I have growing boys, and
mhm,
venison is really good protein. And I wanted
mhm.
we use a lot of hamburgers. So I thought, let's just do venison that way.
Yeah,
And B, there's not a lot to do out here in the wintertime. So why not go out and hunt something? I've shot some birds. Birds are tough. Like the geese are nasty tasting. I can't make jerky out of them,
yeah,
whatever. But the problem with hunting is once you like, if I'm gonna go get a geese, I need to go, okay, get the geese. I need to get some turkey or something else to go with it. I need to mix it. I need to make jerky out of that. I need to get the jerky thing. I need to get that. And it's like, oh my gosh. And then you're like, you're way deep in the weeds.
yeah. I used to do rabbit hunting, and that's about my capacity of hunting. I didn't have the patience to wanna sit in a tree here and wait for a deer to walk by.
Well, and out in Wyoming where I hunt, like, and even Nebraska too. I mean, there's big herds. Like
Yeah,
we're opening morning in Wyoming, we got basically trampled by 40 deer that went right past us, 50 yards away. Like we were just shocked. We're like, holy crap, what the hell's going on? And it was like a big herd came by, and
yeah,
so it's like yeah. In my brother comes off Michigan. He's always shocked by that because like in Michigan, you hike in early, dark 30. You go to the tree blind, you sit there for all day, and then you walk out at dark 30, like way past when it's dark, because you want to get
yeah,
every single minute. And he came out here and he was like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Well, we're gonna go hunting." And he goes, "We're not gonna leave the truck." I said, "No." He goes, "Well, you can't do that." And so we drove around, and I said, "We're gonna hunt this property, that property, this property, that property, that property." And he's looking with his binoculars, and he's like, "That's like 10,000 acres." I'm like, yeah. I'm like, if they're there, they're there. If they're not there, you just drive on. And he was
right.
like, so we drove around the first morning, and he was like, "Do you have like a sporting goods store here?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we went to the sporting goods store, and he bought these $300 pair or $400 pair of binoculars, whatever he had,
Yeah,
because he couldn't, because his binoculars in Michigan only went like 50, 70 yards, and
yeah,
now
because you
he's
don't have,
like a half mile away. you know,
which would be fun of to me, that would be more fun of hunting, is if there's a little distance involved, or, like,
yeah.
I mean, you don't wanna wound an animal obviously either and
No,
let it
no,
run
no.
off,
So,
but
what we do? So you look way out, and then you'll see them in this field, right? And usually they're up in the corn, and there's like where we hunt. There's corn, and there's a bit of water, and there's big draw with the water in. So we sit on
mhm,
this side of the draw, and so the hunting spot in Wyoming we found. Either we drive around and we spot them, or we go back and we hike in and sit. Well, we sit along this fence line, and then you can see them. So you basically just sit there and see them, and then you just make your plan. Like, okay, if that one gets around a little closer over here, maybe we can go this way and shoot that. I mean, so you sit there and make a plan instead of feeling like, oh, I saw one come through the woods, because there is no woods. Like I have what 6 trees in my backyard. My friends were like, "Are you gonna apply for a national forest permit because you have 6 trees?" So I mean, there's no you can't do that. So I mean, bow hunting. What people do with bow hunting out here is they go lay down in the draws because that's the deer goes through the draws. So no, I mean I used to go out and be like, I got a doe tag. Go knock on this farmer's door. Can I go shoot a doe? And he's like, yeah. It says, where are they? There's this hill that they go to, and there's like hay bales around it. And literally, there was 45 deer on top of this hill. And he's like, all right, yeah, go get one. And I'm like, it's just a doe. I'm not going to shoot a buck because I just want the meat. So you basically walk over. I drove in, parked. I get out, and I'm 150 yards away. And the deer are looking at me. They're like, hey, do you want this side or do you want that side?
They're doing the Marilyn Monroe pose.
Mighty mo. Then then it runs about 50 yards, 175 yards. If you shoot it right, falls over, drops. You drive your truck over, you get it, you gut it, you throw it in the truck, you drive home. Like to me, it's like going to the grocery store. Like there's really no.
How are and stuff in your area?
What's that?
How are coyotes and wolves in your area?
Oh, we shot 5 coyotes this year.
Yeah. Which Rogan talks about, and he quotes a book from it. But I didn't realize coyotes, when you shoot one of them, they call at night, and if they don't hear one calling, that the females will lay more. They'll have more pups to make up the difference for, like, they're very invasive animal. Like,
yeah. So every time, so we're out driving around. If we ever see one, we just pull over and fire some rounds down the range, because I've never talked to a single rancher who's ever been like, oh, don't shoot the coyotes. Oh, don't do that. They're always like, there's like, take as many as you want, right? So I remember one year I had an antelope tag and talked to this farmer. He's got wheat strips, and antelope love the wheat strips. And I said, he says, well, how many tags you got? I said, 1. He goes, well, that's good for 3. I'm like, no. I have 1 tag, sir. He goes, I said, why do you don't like those guys? And apparently the antelope eat a Russian olive plant. And this Russian olive plant is really invasive, and it sucks up a lot of water. And so what they do is they eat this plant, then they walk on the wheat strips, start pooping, and then
lay seeds everywhere.
And then they go spray and spray and spray. And so it's like it's more difficult for them to get rid of the weed than they should, because of the way the antelope spread it. So I don't know. It's just interesting. I remember one year I had a bunch of snow geese decoys, which I love. I love decoy hunting, and I just need to spend some money. I just lay down blinds, decoys, calling them. It's so much fun. Laying down in the morning in the snow or whatever, the cold, and you're all bundled up, and then you look out and you see the sunrise over the horizon. It's really, really a cool experience. And I had all these snow geese, and I was sitting in the back of a Jeep Cherokee. And so there's this photo I did of this. You open the hatch, like these geese looking at you like, oh, hi. They're all decoys, right? And Jeep was like, oh my gosh, that's the best thing ever. Like, they're just freaking loved it, right? Because there's all these snow geese decoys.
What's funny in the automotive world, we're somewhat taken away, because the PR teams are seems like New York, very big city. And then some of the engineers and stuff are very kind of country. Like they want to see the vehicles, that's hunting is a big from trucks, man. I mean, that's a big part of it. And because I'm not buying a little Tesla and throwing a deer in the back of it or across the hood, you're buying a truck, a mid-size truck or a full-size truck. So yeah, but
I get a lot of engineers watch my channel, because I think they appreciate that aspect of it. I basically live the lifestyle, right? So like I have 3 rifles and a shotgun over there. I need a new shotgun. I need to order one. But I have all this stuff. I go out hunting when I want to. I was gonna get my. I think the hunting is over, or getting close to being over for geese. Plus, birds are wary right this time of year. But I tend to get just bored a lot of times when I'm trying to go out and hunting. But the deer, I put in every year for deer. I always try to get lots of deer tags. This year I got a deer in Nebraska and deer in Wyoming. I want to do some elk hunting and stuff. That's so expensive,
dude. Elk is so good, man. It's so good.
It is. It's so good, but man, it's like, I think it's like $2,000 for us to go shoot an elk in Wyoming by the time we get all the tags.
So it's not worth it as far as them eat, unless
And then you got to go. They're only in Elk Mountain, which is probably 2.5, 3 hours away. So we got to factor in food costs and overnight lodging and all that. It's just, there's a lot of pieces involved. And then if you get an elk, it's like quartering up and getting off the mountain it's a lot of work. It's not
big animal, man.
Yeah, it's a big animal. So, but I mean, I just it's like I embrace lifestyle. I go fishing, just something different. Just try to do. I just try to. I mean, I love being outside. That's what's killing me right now, the wintertime, because it's been so cold and so snowy. You just can't get outside, and it just drives me nuts.
Right. Well, there you go, guys. There's Hunting Nation Live here.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go down that whole rabbit hole.
No, it's great because I have one more hunting story. So, a buddy of mine, big hunter, loved deer hunting, and big bow hunter, but he liked a rifle as well. Didn't see anything. He was in his tree blind, just nothing all day, and he lowered his rifle down, and he was climbing down his ladder, and all of a sudden, a big ass doe just starts walking by him, and all he had was his 40 on his side, and he was like, boom, which is not legal really, but like he's like, yeah, I got my, can't really tell that story too well because it's kind of a, I wasn't waiting there, I was just climbing down this ladder, and this deer just stupidly walks right by, and it's like, well, I need meat. So
people with deer are always like, oh, you got to go in early morning, you got to put in the black facial stuff, get in there, and you got to hunt them, and you got to shoot a bullet when it's up. And then the comedians always go, and I hit one with my truck.
Yes,
they're not hard animals that
turkey
the biggest problem with hunting is, well, the problem with hunting
is ridiculous.
It's private land. It's so expensive to get permission. It's so hard to get permission. People have this thought process that hunting is bad, and it's like, no, hunting is conservation. It's keeping animals alive, and it's like, that's what we're hunting for, not because we're bloodthirsty killers.
Yeah, believe it or not, when you weed out some deer, it is better for the deer. Like there's more food for it's a better quality animal that's floating around versus I know in New York it's hard to hunt in New York, and they've had a lot of problems with starvation of deer because they're overpopulated. They run out in front of everything, and like here, I'm next to Interstate 24 here. There's dead deer all through. You see them constantly. But I was gonna say turkeys here, man. People always talk about turkey hunting, how difficult it is. I'm like, as a land surveyor, I'm like, I see these. I've caught one before. I was chasing one, and it ran into a fence, and I caught him, and we put him in our steak bag and took him to a buddy's farm who didn't have any turkeys, and he's flourishing, man. He's found other turkey buddies, but turkeys here in Tennessee is ridiculous. Like you could step on it. Like I could probably walk out my front door and nearly step on one. Like you're like, that's not, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of conversations as we move forward as population grows about hunting and conservation and keeping animals alive, and it's so difficult to make people understand that hunters really care about the environment.
Yes,
and they want to keep clean water. We want clean air. We want healthy animal populations, and to get people to understand that we're more caretakers of the environment than some of the so-called green activists are doing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion to have, and it's tough to get people's viewpoint beyond blood,
because they see blood. A lot of people that aren't into it, they just see the blood of it and think, oh, it's so violent and this and that, and that's where they're out with it. But
and the funny thing is, like, what is it, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, this was commonplace.
Yeah. Well, if you saw factory, most of those people, they saw factory farming, it's better. The animal is a lot better being shot out in the field than it is.
I get deer meat that is as natural as you can get. They're eating the same grass as the cows are eating, but they're without the pesticide. So it's actually healthier meat. Like there's always this thing on fitness stuff. It's like, you can't have red meat. Red meat's terrible for you. It's full of all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, what about venison? They're like, oh, venison. Yeah. That's good. That's
it's so lean.
Right? They're like, oh, we're just talking about really fatty cow. I'm like, the one shot up with steroids to make like 300 pounds more than it should. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Sure, I'm all day with you, that guy. But when I go out there and shoot a deer and I have this really thin steak meat, it's like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Well, there you go, guys. We're going down a rabbit hole, and I like to keep these right an hour, and we've already done 20 minutes of hunting, so which I actually love. Once again, go see Tim over there this week. You're going to do a lot. I have nothing this week, man. You might see a building price pop up just out of desperation. So who knows on that. I appreciate everybody coming in early on Saturdays. If you're watching this after the fact, let us know in the comments, guys. If you would smash that like button for me, we've had quite a few watching this and only 17 likes. So if you would create that happiness for me, I would appreciate that. So whether it be 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, it does not matter. Well, today it does, because we're talking mid-size trucks and the Nissan Frontier, which I'm going to do some time again really soon. So peace, everybody.